As a forensic pathologist, here's what I saw when Charlie Kirk was. The gushing blood points to a jugular vein injury. His arms pulling inward is very typical of decorticate posturing, which occurs usually during catastrophic brain damage. At 200 yards with a rifle, which is what would probably cause that, bullets don't just pass through the neck, they would fragment and destroy everything in their path. With that kind of injury, he would have lost consciousness within seconds and survived for less than a minute and probably felt nothing. Law enforcement always finds the shooter, and violence in response to speech is never justified.
The autopsy report has come out, and it's being said that Charlie Kirk didn't feel a thing. From the moment he was struck, he was gone instantly. This points to something bigger, an execution. We need to face the reality of what happened. It doesn't matter if you're on the left, right, or somewhere in between. This was an execution. Now, don't get me wrong, every assassination feels sudden. But history teaches us there are different levels to this. Take Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., for example. When he was shot in Memphis in 1968, he didn't die instantly. He fought for hours in the hospital before doctors finally called it. The same goes for Malcolm X in 1965, or Medgar Evers in 1963. These people lived long enough to give America a chance to hope and pray for their survival. But Charlie Kirk? It was over instantly. If the autopsy confirms what everyone suspects, fatal trauma on impact with no chance for survival, then this case closely resembles a cold, clinical assassination. And that's important because it speaks to intent. The goal wasn't just to silence him, it was to make sure he had no chance to fight back. No last words. No iconic deathbed speeches. That's why Candace, Owens, and Trump are watching this autopsy like hawks. If it proves what they think, it will become clear. Charlie wasn't just a casualty. He was a target. The speed of his death will be part of the story. They wanted him gone fast, with no chance to resist. This narrative is powerful, especially in a movement that thrives on martyrdom.
They're telling me that just within 48 hours before Charlie passed away, his top Jewish donors were pulling funding from him, demanding that Charlie take their name off of the building that they had donated to Turning Point. I guess I can figure out who that is, how many people could have donated a building. And then once Charlie was killed, they said, never mind, put it back on the building. Okay. Charlie himself had alluded to a tremendous loss of money coming in, and we'll speak about that more. More people are going to come out with information. This is all inevitable. Okay. And I'll also point you in this direction. You guys remember Bibi recently was on a PR blitz, despite the fact that he was, fighting this 96,000 front war because it do nothing. Okay. He was doing a ton of podcasts in America. He went on to Patrick Bet-David's podcast. He went on to Brandon Tatum's podcast. He went on to the Nelk Boys podcast. Anybody find it weird he didn't do Charlie Kirk's show?
Candace Owens wasted no time making her feelings clear. From the very first words of her podcast, she declared that Charlie Kirk wasn't just dead. He was taken out. Not passed away, not tragically lost, executed in broad daylight. And she wasn't shy about calling out anyone who was spreading lies about his death. What stood out in her rant wasn't just grief. It was fury. She admitted she wept, something she rarely does, and then turned that grief into anger. She accused political figures and the media of twisting Charlie's story to serve their own agendas. She even called out one prominent leader by name, claiming they misrepresented Charlie's last letter, turning him into a soldier for his country. In her eyes, Charlie had been under intense pressure, cornered by billionaires and donors who didn't like his willingness to give space to opposing views. That pressure was escalating before his death.
I tell you, he didn't work alone on the internet because it seems that he became radicalized on the internet. That's just by watching same things that you're watching and hearing. It looks like he became radicalized over the internet. And it seems like he has wonderful parents, brought in a wonderful neighborhood, smart guy, great boards, great marks, great student. And then something happened to him over a fairly short period of time. It looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left. I have a lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected. But as you understand, I think very well from the tone of your question. Thank you very much.
As expected, Trump entered the conversation in his usual way. He framed Charlie's death as part of the broader story of MAGA persecution. Trump claimed, "They tried to take me out. They took him out, and they'll try again." For Trump, Charlie's death wasn't just the loss of an ally. It was another example of the system trying to take down the MAGA movement. The image of Charlie flanked by the US and Israeli flags, put out by Trump's camp, only fueled the conspiracies that Candace was already igniting. The narrative began to split in real time. On one side, you had Owens, raw and emotional, framing Charlie's last days as a man under siege. She hinted that his refusal to bend to outside pressures might have sealed his fate. On the other, you had Trump inflating Charlie into a martyr for the MAGA cause, a symbol for patriots constantly under attack. Meanwhile, the media mostly focused on Erica Kirk's, Charlie's widow, and her powerful words about keeping Charlie's mission alive. But on social media, it was Candace's fiery accusations that went viral. She wasn't just grieving her friend, she was marking her territory, claiming to be the keeper of his legacy, and daring anyone to challenge her.
To wake up. Because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right. We all thought that at some point. We believed that. You're my enemy, you're my enemy. It is not a battle between Russia, Ukraine. I don't care what your political issue of the day is. What is happening right now in the world and what just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus goodness.
Now let's talk about something that got the blogs buzzing, the whispers surrounding Charlie Kirk's death. Was it a random act of violence, or were there larger forces at play? The theory that keeps circling is that Charlie crossed the wrong people, and I'm going to call them the blue country in the Middle East. For years, Charlie was one of their biggest defenders. You couldn't find him on stage without him praising their government, policies, and their special relationship with America. He fundraised with them, stood beside their biggest lobbyists, and defended them on college campuses. He was the golden boy for their cause.
Let me ask you, in the conflict of versus Hamas, who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the government are evil, but I think also that there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children. The futile.
Let's hear it out.
There is no justification, Mr. Kirk, for invading hospitals, for innocent populations, and dragging out a war which is damaging Israel and the West's security.
You've made that point, but
it's not a point; it's a moral truth, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish. I let you talk.
But then, about a year ago, things started to shift. It wasn't loud at first, just subtle. Instead of full-throated praise, Charlie began asking tougher questions. He started platforming guests who weren't 100% aligned with the narrative of that blue country in the Middle East. And if you know anything about politics, even a small crack in the armor can look like betrayal. Just days before his death, Charlie sat down with Ben Shapiro. The conversation reportedly got tense, with Charlie pressing harder than usual, asking tough questions about policy, influence, and who truly benefits from America's billions overseas. Looking back, that interview feels eerie, almost like foreshadowing. Some now believe that was the moment he sealed his own fate.
Ben, some people would accuse of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So ethnic cleansing, the idea, presumably, that population movement is equivalent to ethnic cleansing. I think ethnic cleansing is a term that's been fairly recently coined to describe population movement during war. And the reality is that's been ongoing for literally all of human history. The idea that is, quote unquote, forcing people out of the Gaza Strip, that is not the stated policy of the government. The idea is if people want to leave, they can, but they're not being forced to.
Here's where Candace Owens leans into the conspiracy lane. She claimed that Charlie was under intense pressure from billionaires and donors, those same people who didn't want him questioning the narrative about that blue country. Add it all up, and the internet is buzzing with the theory that these weren't just wealthy Americans. These were allies of the blue country. If Charlie was about to break ranks with them, it would make him dangerous. History has shown that critics of this region have been smeared, deplatformed, or cut off from funding. The narrative is that if you speak out too loudly against them, there's a price to pay. In Charlie's case, some are whispering that the price wasn't just losing donors, it was losing his life. Now, I'm not saying this theory is fact, but look at the timeline. A year of subtle criticism, a tense interview with Shapiro, Candace screaming about billionaire pressure, and then, boom, Charlie's death. No chance to resist. No last words. It's no wonder people are asking if this was random violence or a warning to others thinking of speaking out.
However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite.
Let's step back from the conspiracy talk for a moment. History teaches us that sometimes the real danger doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. And that's the whisper hanging over this whole Charlie Kirk story. Not just who pulled the trigger, but who stands to gain from his absence. Charlie wasn't just an activist. He was a brand. Turning Point USA wasn't just a campus movement. It was a multi-million-dollar machine, funded by donors and billionaires, with Charlie as its figurehead. Take him out and there's an empty throne. A chair everyone claims to honor, but many would love to sit in. Candace Owens wasn't subtle when she warned about people trying to slide into Charlie's chair. That wasn't a metaphor. That was a warning. Politics is cutthroat. Today you're the voice of the youth, and tomorrow your so-called friends are auditioning to replace you. So who benefits most from Charlie's silence? The donors who thought he was straying from the script? Other conservative influencers trying to step into his spotlight? Or maybe political heavyweights who'd rather fold his energy into their own brand than risk him going rogue? I'm not saying Charlie's inner circle planned his death, but it's hard to ignore how quickly vultures started circling. Turning Point leadership is already talking continuity, and other voices in Magaland are stepping up with tributes that feel a little too much like resumes. And Candace? She's staking her claim as the one who knew the real Charlie best. But here's the flip side. What if this wasn't a conspiracy at all? What if it was just one man, one violent act, and no grand plan? Even if that's the truth, it doesn't matter. Because in today's world, perception is reality. Candace, Trump, and the movement have already spun this as an execution. And once the narrative locks in, the facts rarely stand a chance.